Hi, everybody. It's Susan, and I'm back with the Libra new moon. So today is actually the equinox, and all around the world we have equal night and equal day. And it's always an interesting time of turnover, whether it be the autumn or the spring. Of course, in the northern hemisphere, we're going towards darkness, and in the southern hemisphere towards the light. But here it's doubling up this symbolism of Libra, this need to find balance, a need to find a new way of working with equilibrium, and especially energetically. You know, as we go into the autumn and into the winter, from now until certainly the end of December, it gets quite difficult in the northern hemisphere to achieve the same things without losing a lot of energy. So in Ayurveda, we talk about the Vata season, Vata leading into Kapha season. And the Vata season is very cold and dry, and then Kapha can be wet and cold. Either way, it's going to cause us to lose some energy if we try and push through in the way that we did, for example, during the summer and the spring, where the energy is just bursting. So this time of the year is always a good time to reflect and readjust your energy levels, your output, what it is that you commit to. And maybe with this Libra new moon so close to the equinox, we can really get that message on an individual level. On a global level as well, the Libra new moon is also talking about issues around diplomacy and fairness and justice, which is in short supply these days. And so we're looking also at the symbolism of rebalancing and harmonizing relationships internationally as well as individually. So definitely have a look in your own life at this time. Where can I find more harmony, more inner harmony, and of course, harmony within my relationships? So don't worry about the house placements, because this just happens to be set for where I live, which is in Brussels. And in fact, the 0-degree Cancer is just a coincidence. It happens to be 0 degrees of rising in Cancer, while this new moon in Libra is happening at 2 degrees and 48 minutes of Libra. So we'll look later on individually how that affects each rising sign particularly, and then of course the sun and the moon. It also is helpful if you've got a stellium, for example, a lot of planets in one house, then also check for that stellium, even if it doesn't happen to be your sun or your moon or in your first house, because that will strongly affect you as well. So we see at this new moon that we've got Venus and Mercury really close by. And in fact, before the moon arrives at the sun to conjunct with the sun and form the moon is going to be conjunct Venus and then Mercury and then coming to the sun. And so it's kind of like taking a little bit of information on the way to greeting the sun before this new moon. And the moon in Libra is ruled by Venus. And Venus, as the ruler, happens to be currently in Virgo. And because Venus is in Virgo, not terribly happy, not terribly comfortable, that already gives us a taste of what this moon's energy is like. Not unpleasant, because it's Venus after all. It's always going to be benefic, but Venus is just not in her best energy. And also that Venus is conjunct a retrograde Mercury. So it looks like there's a lot of stuff that we need to reassess in relationship, reassess around finance, of course, because Venus also represents money and finance. And then we can say that that also represents our values as well. So with Mercury retrograde moving very strong, because now it's back in its domicile in Virgo, Mercury retrograde is kind of coming back towards Venus and saying, well, let's have a look at this again. Let's see, is there something there that we need to reassess and look at again? So this energy is really interesting also because at the time of this new moon, we've got Jupiter opposing. When Jupiter opposes, because of course it's benefic as well, it's going to add a nice energy. It's not going to be confrontational energy, but we can also tend to bite off more than we can chew. And so Jupiter already in Aries is quite enthusiastic, quite a strong Jupiter. Not necessarily a dignified Jupiter, and so it can be a little bit impatient or jumping in where things haven't really been planned or thought out yet. And again, this can be an additional bit of information when we look at where Jupiter is for you currently, which we'll see sign by sign, in that opposition to where we find Libra. So obviously for Libras, this is your new moon, and that Jupiter is in your house of others. It's in your house of relationship. And so this is going to be a big discussion area for Libras for quite some time to come. Certainly until Jupiter moves out of that 7th house in the spring of 2023. Nonetheless, for all of us, with this opposition between the new moon in Libra and Jupiter in Aries, there's also this added message of harmony. Aries is very much about what I want. It's very much about impulse and inspiration in terms of what somebody would like to start, like a pioneering kind of energy. And Libra is very much about the us. It's me versus we with Aries Libra. And Libra is very much about thinking about other people. But Libra is also a cardinal sign. It also instigates things. It's also very dynamic. It's also very busy. And so that energy of Libra is in no way passive, but that dynamism can be perhaps a little overwhelming right now because we also have this slightly sort of baffling energy of Neptune, which is opposing Venus at the same time. So this Neptune-Venus opposition was exact, in fact, at the time of the solstice, but it's still very, very close because it's within a degree and a bit. It's within 2 degrees. And so we have this energy of not being able to be clear, not being able to necessarily trust, and Venus signifying money, relationships, all these things that we value, that we care for. Neptune can make us be a little over optimistic. It can have us not really paying attention, not really knowing for sure what we can rely on. Just for anybody who's engaging at the moment in a new relationship or a new business deal or a new agreement based on some kind of, I don't know, investment, for example, or some money issue, go slowly and I would suggest take your time until at least we see that Mercury has turned direct again after the 2nd or 3rd of October. So really another week, maybe 10 days before you allow things to really sort of settle and see what direction things are going in. Equally at that time, Venus will be in better dignity, and that means that she's moving into Libra, the sign that she rules, where we find this new moon. And when Venus moves into Libra, I think you'll also have a better sense of the transaction or the relationship or the issue at hand. So it can be very romantic, but it can also have you not seeing clearly, or it can be very pie in the sky. Neptune is above all about this kind of illusory. It's kind of like the thing that seems just so perfect, so wonderful. Often people will say that Neptune is really about compassion and higher love and so on. And that is absolutely true. But the truth is that when we see that in a generalized way, that's not how most people navigate Neptune. So Neptune is often navigated collectively, especially and by the majority of people, through that sense of wanting things to be true and therefore declaring them so. And or maybe just not being 100% honest, or being more involved in escapism and fantasizing about things. This is really very much about deception. And if we look again in terms of the significators of Venus in Libra, and that diplomacy and that harmony, this building of relationship, building of confidence, there again, we have this kind of issue. Is this okay? Am I able to trust this? And so the answer is to be slow and steady and not rush into something, and not especially rush into judgment. So bless their little hearts. And this Libran energy, although they want to be fair and they want to be harmonious with everybody, they also can be extremely judgmental. And so that sort of sense of judgment of others is very, very much in there. But we have to kind of, for the moment, withhold that, not I mean, actually, we should always be like this, but, not judging, not rushing into judgment as if we had all of the facts, as if we knew really what was going on. I think it's pretty clear to anybody who's really paying attention that there's a lot of muddied waters in the world at the moment, and it's not very clear what's going on. And so keeping a lot of flexibility and not prejudging situations is the best way forward, because otherwise you get locked in to a position which can actually cause quite a lot of struggle. And we see that struggle also at this new moon when we find Pluto in the 7th house in Capricorn, also retrograde, lots of retrograde energy right now. And Pluto is in a strong trine to Mercury. This makes the communications and the thinking and the assessment of things extremely powerful. It brings that energy out in a very, very dynamic way, in a very strong way. This can bring forth some kind of declaration or strong communication that may come across as true or important or valid, but it's still going to have that signature of this challenge from Neptune and this opposition with Jupiter and the new moon, which says that things could be blown up out of proportion or maybe not being presented in a way that's accurate. So once again, and sadly, this is kind of the theme of these times, is we cannot really trust what we're seeing and what we're hearing. And what we can really trust is to go deeper inside. So Neptune also represents our intuition. And that intuition, for it to be accurate, for it to be reliable, requires that we really feel it in the body. So intuition has nothing to do with our opinion or our thought. And often what we intuit about things is often very much in contrast to how we think about something. We might desire something, that's Venus. We have a wish or a desire for something to look one way, and the intuition is telling us something very different. And the intuition will be correct, but the mind will override that. And so it's important for the body and the mind to be quite calm and clear, to be able to get this inner guidance, to be able to rely on it. So if you have a stressed body and mind, if you're overly busy in your mind, overly active, and your body is, sort of running on fumes, and you really can't access a deeper intuition because you're in this kind of chronic fight or flight or freeze energy, which many of us spend a lot of our days in, intuition is really, really challenging. It's hard to know what is correct. And so we need to slow down at this time. We need to pull ourselves back so that we don't jump to conclusions and say, that's my intuition telling me that. We can be very easily misled. This Neptunian intuition can be equally some kind of Neptunian delusion. So again, caution, just be cautious. I'm very skeptical when people tend to overemphasize this aspect of Neptune as universal love and harmony and so on. And I wish that were true. And the truth is that most people don't fall towards that end of the spectrum. Most people fall towards the other end, which is that tricking and deluding, and including themselves, by the way. So we start by deluding ourselves so that we can buy into the delusions around us. So this, for many people, is totally innocent. It's not that they're mean, they're evil, they're trying to harm people. They just want to live a quiet life. They want to have ease in life. And so it's easier to believe in something because we want it to be true rather than recognizing that it is. Again, just a word of caution at this new moon, because this is the phase of this whole next month. And this next month, we start to move into the phase of the eclipses, which is going to make things quite powerful, sort of advancing really quickly. I'll do videos on that as well. The first one coming the 25th of October, the next one coming the 8th of November. So we're entering into this energy that is already coming towards instability. It's coming towards this kind of rapid change. So slow yourself down, use this energy, especially if you're in the northern hemisphere, take this energy of darkening days where the days get somehow a little bit sleepier, and we're kind of called to go to bed earlier, and we feel like we need to sleep more. Do sleep more. Don't challenge yourself on that. We're not robots, you see, so we're meant to live according to the cycles of nature. In Ayurveda, it's called Ritucharya, the seasonal mastery, the seasonal rhythms that we live with. And we benefit from that. And we benefit not just physically, but also emotionally and psychologically. Our mind functions better when we follow the rhythms of nature. So let this also be a part of what you're harmonizing at this time of the Libra new moon. The other aspect that's bringing a lot of power into this new moon is that there's a lovely supportive trine between Mars and Saturn. So Mars and Saturn are both considered malefics. That doesn't mean they're necessarily bad guys, but they do work hard. They are disruptors, let's say. Mars is always the karaka of change. It's about representing change and dynamism. And Saturn is very much about structure, making something last, making something real. Now, Saturn is also in a square, in a tense aspect to Uranus within a degree from now until the end of October. So this is building part of this theme of instability. It's building again and again in the way that we felt that very strongly in 2021. So it's kind of been a square all the way through 2022 as well, but this is the closest that they're going to get within a degree. And so by the middle of October, we're going to feel it very strongly. And that's something that, again, I think, especially between the 1st and the 11th or 12th of October, we should be aware that things can be feeling very destabilizing, very agitated. And there can be this force because we've got this strength from Mars trining Saturn here, sort of imprinting this new moon, this new cycle with this dynamic, powerful energy that makes somebody have a lot of willpower. And then that same energy of the Pluto, which is in this very dynamic, powerful energy with Mercury and even Venus. I forgot even to mention Venus, Pluto, Venus aspects, supportive, strong, powerful aspects. It's about money. It's about our relationships, but it's also about markets like stock markets and so on. Mars is equally representing that because that's again the energy of Gemini, where Mars is found now. It's very mercantile. It's very much about exchanges of all kinds. And so if you like the Mercury energy that is part of the Gemini quality of the exchange is more the place that the exchange is happening, the context for the exchange, and the Venus energy as it regards money in the Libran sense, or in even the Taurian sense, as Venus also rules Taurus. It's very much about the stuff we exchange. The context of the exchange is the Gemini, and the things that we exchange, whether it be money or food or belongings, those things are Venusian. And so all of this is implicated at the same time. So forcefulness of communication, forcefulness of will, a drive to get something to happen. Mars and Gemini can really stir things up with angry words. Mars and Gemini is fighting tools and fighting words. Gemini is representing weapons and tools, and Mars is, of course, the warrior. And so this can lead to impatience in communications. It can lead to rash decisions. We've here in Europe, we are subject to this insanity of sanctions that are destroying Europe while not having at all the desired effect. Big businesses are really struggling right now, and we haven't even entered into the winter. And the crazy thing is that all of this is happening in this kind of whirlwind of puff. It's all coming in this sort of atmosphere of wanting to do the good thing, wanting to do the right thing in terms of what things appear. Now, that's pure Neptune. So here again, we have that referencing to, whatever's being said or whatever is being exchanged, whatever is being discussed, the balance that we're trying to find is not necessarily clear. It's not necessarily the right one, because there is this sense of making this look good. It's not about whether it's definitely right, legitimately right. Does it look good? This is one of the things about Libra. It can have a particularly superficial energy. It's always looking for harmony, always trying to make things work. Libra is often the one sign that struggles the most with harmony in relationships, particularly, but even in choices, it's hard because Libra is always looking at all the possibilities to try and keep everyone happy, and that's just not possible. So we need that Aries energy that's ruled by Mars, that drive that says, let's just do this. Let's take this choice. This is the one that works for me. So again, just want to re-emphasize, this is not a great time for taking huge leaps of faith. If you have been in a relationship for a long time, this can be wonderfully romantic. It can be extremely exciting and can be a really great time to hash things out or talk about things or, talk about future plans. But if it's a fresh relationship or some new connection that you're making with a business partnership, for example, or something along those lines, take it slowly. You might want to plan things now and give it a couple of weeks, like breathing space and having a sense that you can come back to the agreement later. So this is a very energetic new moon, leading us ideally towards harmony, leading us ideally towards something better, something more creative in terms of relationships, but it can also be afflicted by polarized emotions. This one of the things about the Aries Libra axis is that depolarization between what I need and what we need. And so that's going to be factoring in here. We'll see that again in 2 weeks when I talk about the full moon that's coming in Aries. And that again is going to be a strong emphasis. So it's kind of a seasonal energy right now. So it's about pausing, I think, maybe just to wrap it up, pausing and observing other perspectives and recognizing that we don't have the whole story. We don't have all of it. And therefore we need to be able to slow down and before determining maybe who the bad guy is, if we can even define one. And determining what the thing is to do, we can take our time, knowing as well that these upcoming eclipses, 25th of October and 8th of November, are going to bring radical change yet again. It's going to be something that we'll have to grapple with as we move forward into the winter. Things are shifting. Now, remember, the eclipses are happening in the Taurus and Scorpio axis since the beginning of this year, since January 2022. And already since May of 2018, we've had Uranus in Taurus. That has been very, very intensely these last few months, and even the last 4 years, has been very much about shaking up our economy, shaking up our food supply, shaking up aspects of nature and how we relate to the world itself, how we relate to the actual physical planet and the environment. These are significators also of economic disruption. And this is certainly an aspect that we saw in the Great Depression when Uranus was in Taurus the last time, also leading us towards extreme politics, extreme right-wing politics, extreme domineering type of, sort of fascist style leadership. And so, these are crazy times that we're in. Misunderstandings are likely. Kind of keep that in mind and just recognize that sometimes better not to say anything than to say something that you'll regret later, especially with Mars and Gemini. That's a very strong message. So let's have a look at how this affects all the rest of the signs. So you can go sign by sign through your chart and see how this might be affecting you. So Aries, this is in your 7th house of commitments. And in the 7th house, of course, this is very much about relationships. You can't escape it, I'm afraid, Aries. You do have Jupiter in your 1st house. So it seems like certainly since last May 2022, that you will have had a sense of what you want and having a new sense of vitality, perhaps a sense of wanting to start things over, perhaps starting things over on your terms. And so this is really emphasized at this new moon because now that Jupiter is exactly opposite the new moon. And so this question of whatever Jupiter has brought to you since May in terms of self-understanding and ambition and desires, that is something that you're seeing now in a new light. What do I want to begin again? What do I want to renew in relationships? Perhaps also for you, depending on other aspects of your chart, there can be somebody new in your life. And so that would be, again, keeping in mind what I said earlier in the general section about, just taking on board how you feel about the person, noticing how things go between you, but not necessarily jumping in too quickly. If something is too good to be true, it's too good to be true. It's just the way it is. Not to burst your bubble there, Aries, but just a word of caution. And so the other aspect is your ruler in the third house in Gemini. Mars is in the third house. And that is also creating quite a lot of energy in communications for you. And so that can have you anyway, since August already and all the way through March, that can have you a bit sharp in communication, that can have you being quite harsh, potentially causing some challenges in relationships. So just notice that. That, of course, depends on other aspects of your chart. But just slow and steady wins the race, Aries. I know you won't listen to me anyway, but that's the way it goes. So yeah, just count to 10 before you speak, and hopefully you will be able to use your words with confidence rather than with aggression. So good luck with this lunar cycle, and I'll see you at the full moon. Taurus, this happens in your sixth house. It's your health, and it's also things that you have to overcome. The sixth house can be challenging. It can make you realize that there's something that needs to change around your everyday work, perhaps around your health habits, or there's something that you feel motivated to change. That would be a really good use of this energy if that's the case. The good news is that for you, you have Venus and Mercury for the time being in your fifth house. And so that makes things feel really nice because Venus is your ruler. And when Venus is in the fifth house, it feels fun. And so actually you might be finding this desire for something new in terms of your health or daily habits or overcoming challenges that's coming actually through a sense of creativity, could be with regards to your children, something that causes you to feel more inspiration, more enthusiasm. Of course, you also have the North Node in your sign. And so with the North Node in your sign, you're anyway reaching out into the world in new ways. You're expanding yourself in very different ways. With Uranus there since 2018, this has been inevitable. So for good or bad, because that's again going to be very distinct depending on you and your life cycle, etc. So I think this is actually quite a lovely energy for you, even though it's happening in the sixth house. I think it's a great time when you come up in the new moon cycle, when you come up into the sixth house. It's a really nice time to set yourself a goal, challenging yourself to change habits that you might find improve your health or make you more efficient, for example. So I think it's actually quite nice for Taurus, and I wish you well. Have a great lunar cycle. Gemini, this is happening in your fifth house. So that's very nice to have a new moon in the house of all pleasant things. So perhaps there's something new and dynamic coming up in possibly even relationships. Since you've got Mars in your first house, you're quite assertive, you're quite busy, you're quite out there as well. So maybe it's you that's flirting or doing that kind of online searching for dates or whatever you might be doing. And that can also be with regards to children, of course. Maybe you're well established in a relationship and you have children, and there's something here that's new in their lives. It may not even be directly about you, but if it is with regards to children, for example, it could be something new in the life of your children, and you're now in a new cycle. And then, of course, you've got Venus and Mercury in your fourth house of home. Mercury is your ruler. And so that's also something that is bringing a lot of energy into your home. That can also be your emotions, your sense of priorities around that, around house and home, around what makes you feel secure, what makes you feel safe. Your Mercury is very strong. In Virgo, it's one of the co-rulerships along with Gemini. And so it's something that you might find very helpful right now if there is a desire, for example, to move, or if there is a desire to remodel your house, or it might even be psychological or emotional, that you want to go over a sense of inner well-being, your emotional nature. With Mercury retrograde there until about the 2nd or 3rd of October, this is actually a nice time to start a process. Now at this new moon, start this process of expanding that, either your psychology or your sense of where you want to live, what it is that you need to feel secure at home. So all in all, I think really, really good for you in that regard. And then really nice for Gemini especially is that you've got Jupiter in the 11th house. So Jupiter in the 11th house is really good luck. It's just really nice, lots of expansive plans and ideas, perhaps new acquaintances, new groups of people that you hang out with. So all in all, I think this is a very pleasant new moon for Gemini. Take it like that. And what I said earlier about Mars being in the sign of Gemini definitely applies to you. That goes right through till March of 2023, Gemini. So give yourself some time. Don't rush into arguments, especially don't try to fight and win arguments. It's maybe not worth it, because you'll find when Mars goes retrograde, which is coming up very soon in 2 weeks' time, then you're going to have to go back and clean up your mess. So try not to make a mess in the first place. And usually with Gemini, especially Gemini rising, there's a great cheerfulness about the person. And so you can kind of get away with it, but don't always be sure of that. Anyway, have a great lunar cycle, and I'll see you at the full moon. Cancer, this is happening in your 4th house. That's your natural house. And so it feels very comfortable for Cancer. 4th house is what makes you feel safe and secure, the emotional nature. 4th house is also family. It's what you inherit from your parents. It's the lineage coming back and back into your family. It can also be the actual physical home or property. And so there's something new here, something agitating here. I suspect for Cancers, this has been happening for quite some time. This is definitely something that Cancers have been, in fact, all water signs have been reflecting on. It's what is home, and where do I want to live? And so with Cancer, this could be that you find a new solution, or you find some ideas in terms of where you want to go, how you want to establish yourself in a new home or a new way of being at home. It might also be that you just find a new rhythm with your family, or you set your heart on literally kind of improving your emotional state and working on yourself through perhaps psychotherapy. This would be a great time to do that if that's the case for you. And then keep in mind that Venus and Mercury are in your 3rd house of communication, a really good time to do this kind of work on yourself, whether it be through therapy or just getting together with friends and talking over things and connecting with people socially, because Venus and Mercury in the 3rd house is very, very harmonious. This can also be around siblings as well. And then very especially around work, around how you establish yourself in terms of the day-to-day skills that you might employ at work. Maybe you're with Mercury retrograde there, you might be reviewing that. You already had a few weeks of that earlier in September when Mercury first went direct through your 3rd house. Now it's retrograding into the 3rd house until the 2nd of October, when it turns back and heads eventually back into the 4th house. And so this 3rd house and 4th house for you has been very much a question, and that might be what's coming up in the 4th house. Is what maybe do I work from home, or how can I work better from home, or is there something that I need to learn to improve my situation at work? So all of these things right now in this cycle, very much highlighted. Take a realistic approach, because we've still got that Neptune across from Venus. So you may not be communicating clearly, or your communication may not be as clear as you think. And also you may be receiving information from others in a way that's not very clear. So just be careful, not to jump the gun, not to assume certain things. You do have Jupiter in the 10th house. This is very powerful right now. Even though Jupiter is about to leave the 10th house, it's going to be very brief. going back into your ninth house from the end of October through till about the 20th of December. So this is a very big time for Cancers to reconsider work and establish yourself in how you want to work. And I think probably while Jupiter is retrograde till the 28th of October, those questions will be a little confusing. Maybe not finding solutions, but finding more questions that require a lot more experimentation. So don't worry, when Jupiter moves direct and certainly into 2023, those answers will come. So take your time. This could be that the new moon is telling you to just rest, to take some more time in the fourth house, stay at home, be calm, do things on your own. With Mars in the 12th house, that's another way that that can look, is that you want to spend more time behind the scenes doing things that will be of value, but not necessarily noticed right away. Mars in the 12th can also agitate emotions. It can also disrupt sleep, even disrupt your sense of deeper self and self sabotage even can come up with Mars in the 12th. Again, just slow down, take a breath, and take your time to see the lay of the land before you jump the gun and try and sort things out. Jupiter is having you chomping at the bit to do something different in the world. It's not quite ripe yet. It's not right. It's not time. So have a lovely lunar cycle, Cancer, and I'll speak to you again at the full moon. Leo, this is happening in your third house. This new moon is about your skills and communications at work. It's what you do in terms of reaching out into your community. So maybe there's something new there that is worth exploring. You have a great gift with people because Venus rules this house. It rules your communication sector and neighbors and brothers and sisters and so on, cousins and so on. And so usually you have quite a harmonious time with people. That ease, the facility with which you can communicate with people helps bring you that charisma that you're known for. And so because your second house right now is being transited by Venus and Mercury, it looks also like there's a lot to do with money here. And so for Leo, again, this big question, especially because it seems to be very much to do with money or potentially self-worth as well. Because Neptune is opposing that, just go slow and be careful because you may not be seeing things too clearly. Just at this particular time. So this week, the last week of September, especially, perhaps even in the first week of October, go slow and try not to, sign if you can avoid signing contracts, for example. The sun is in the third house, so that can be very good for new businesses, new business things, but that will continue beyond the Mercury retrograde. So if that's the case, you want to initiate work, initiate business agreements and so on. Sun in Libra in the third house and a new moon there. So perhaps you could wait until after the first week of October. If you're really worried about something, if you're really not sure, then wait until Mercury is out of its shadow, which will be about the middle of October. So nothing too much to worry about there, but just always be aware that Neptune can be clouding judgment on perhaps your own sense of self-worth, either direction, maybe like I'm, overconfident or not confident enough at the moment. And it's amazing how many Leos I know who are very lacking in confidence despite their reputation. And then, of course, you've got Jupiter as well for Leo. Jupiter is in your, let me see here. So Jupiter is in your ninth house, Leo, and that's something that is a really wonderful boost because also it's with regards to a new way of seeing yourself in the world, new philosophy of life, perhaps new potentials out in the world. But again, Jupiter is retrograde right now. And so because there's so many retrograde planets, I think it could be that we're actually being called to withdraw a little bit before taking action. And what the French say is reculer pour mieux sauter. So you're having this sense of being able to step back, reassess what it is that you want, reassess potentially also international agreements or connections or business deals or even higher studies, for example, reassess them and notice that in November and most of December, there's going to be a renewed renewed energy around money, a renewed energy around shared resources that may answer some questions with regards to all of what I've just said here. So yeah, easy does it, Leo, and have a really great lunar cycle. I'll see you again at the full moon. Virgo, this is happening in your second house. And with the new moon in the second house, it's something to do with money. It's got a lot to do with how you see yourself as well. This can be around your sense of worth, what it is that you find of value, what it is that supports you. And so it might be that you require some upgrading there, and maybe there's some ideas that you have to renew something or start something afresh. This would be a great cycle to do that in. Also, because you've got Mercury and Venus in your first house of self, this is actually quite lovely. It's very supportive. So whatever it is that you want to start fresh, then that allows you this opportunity to make good decisions or to have a sense of, cooperation, doing things in a constructive way. Very helpful. Still keep in mind, though, that you've got Neptune in the seventh house. It means you're not fully seeing what's going on in terms of you in the eyes of another or the person that you're looking at. And there can be deception or a sense of not being too clear around relationships. That's been for a long time, Virgo. That's already been over 10 years like that. So you might be an old hand at this. But because Venus is very strongly opposing Neptune right now at this new moon, definitely, again, especially here, taking your time with relationships, taking your time with money. Jupiter is in your house of shared resources. That's a lovely aspect because it brings you opportunities from other people, brings you lots of work and potential sort of windfalls from various things that you didn't expect. So it's a nice bonus to have. It also can bring a certain amount of harmony in the people around you that you share resources with, so that they themselves are also expanding and growing. That just has a knock-on effect on you. So I think for Virgo, this is actually quite a nice new moon. It's a very nice cycle. Keep in mind that your ruler, Mercury, is retrograde until the 2nd or 3rd of October. And so just bear in mind that that also is a good time to reassess things, slow down, and take stock, as it were. And so then as you go forward into October, you'll have much more oomph, which may have been lacking up until now over the last 3 weeks that Mercury has been retrograde. So I think that's it for you. I think otherwise, and also remembering that the nodes are in quite a harmonious aspect to you. And so a lot of the changes that are happening to you, around you and through you and to you, are actually going to bring you enormous benefit. Of course, there can be challenges there too, but that can bring you a lot of benefit. And so all the best with this lunar cycle, Virgo, and I'll see you at the full moon. Hey, Libra, this is all about you. Your first house of self is where we find the new moon here. And this is going to be like a start, a fresh start, almost like it's your birthday. For many of you, it is your birthday. And if your birthday is around this time, these next few days, around the time of the new moon on either side by a couple of days, this is very much influencing you personally. Think of this as a new cycle that begins in the middle of the year. You might find that anyway, at this time of the year for you, you're always finding a sense of revitalization and enjoyment of this season. While others might be struggling a bit, you might be feeling like, what's the problem? I'm ready to go. So a really lovely time to regenerate and get yourself on track. Now, you've also got Jupiter in the house of other, in the house of relationship, that's boosting your sense of coupling, your sense of relationship. This is, of course, what you're here for, Libra. This is all about connecting with other people. not that that's necessarily easy or happening spontaneously, but it's what you need to feel well in this lifetime. So other people matter enormously for you. Jupiter going through that seventh house can have you forgetting yourself. So this new moon can also be a reminder that you also need to pay attention to yourself and your needs. And when Jupiter is in the seventh house of relationships, it can have you focusing so much on other people or focusing so much on trying to get into a relationship that you end up forgetting your own values. And as a result, you might actually compromise yourself, compromise your values. And keep in mind also, because you've got Mercury and Venus in the 12th house, there's some things that are not clear, not very clear to you. They're not really in your awareness yet. You're going to have a lovely time through October. By the end of September, we've got Venus moving through your house of self, the first house, your ruler. So you're going to feel much more confident, much more clear. Mercury will turn direct on the 2nd and 3rd of October. And from then until the rest of October, you're going to have both Venus and Mercury really energizing you. So don't get frustrated if you find that things are not clear right now. Don't keep pushing at it, because it's just a little bit muddy, especially with the opposition to Neptune from Venus. You're going to find that things are just not that straightforward. You may even have some kind of problems with your health. And if that's the case, wait to find a solution. You may have to wait a couple of weeks into October. Certainly the first week of October, things will become much more clear. And then you'll also be able to take better action. So don't fret if there is something going on in terms of your health and wellness, or if things even, let's say, physically at the office are not very clear, not very helpful. Stay out of the office gossip. I know that's a thing that Libras love to get into. Don't do it. Just stay away, because you might get yourself in trouble with Neptune there, particularly at this time in this lunar cycle. So I think for you, this is actually quite a potentially wonderful cycle to re-energize you, give you a new sense of self, potentially also remind you that you're also a part of the equation, that you shouldn't always compromise yourself in relationship, that you're not there to make other people feel happy. You're there to make yourself happy through other people. And that can have a very positive effect compared to, potentially over giving or over people pleasing, which can actually lead to a lot of conflict in relationships. So you are enough, Libra, and remember that throughout this cycle, as you enjoy lots of energy through the Sun and Venus and Mercury in your first house of self. See you at the full moon. Scorpio, you have this moon happening in your 12th house. So you might find that there's some sense of things far away from you that are not very clear, something that is not necessarily in your everyday life, but that is important to you nonetheless, psychologically, or through relationships that are far away, lands that are far away. Something new coming in here can also have you realizing a cycle where you understand that you've been perhaps behaving in a particular way that's undermining yourself. This can also be something to do with confinement of all kinds. Again, that depends on your own particular chart and how you're experiencing that. So it can be that there may be illness involved in this. The opposite end of that is that Jupiter is in your house of everyday health and illness, as well as work and so on. So it might be that you're literally so busy that you're running yourself down, and you end up in a kind of a burnout. But, again, with this Scorpio rising, can be, you push so hard, you can be sort of resistant to letting down your guard, as it were. You don't want to show other people that you're weak. And so you push yourself, and you might push yourself so hard that you end up burning out. So be careful of that. You do have as a lovely aspect here, especially if you want to take some kind of support from friends. You've got the Venus and Mercury conjunction happening in your 11th house of friends. It's also where you find good fortune, just really nice, pure dumb luck in the 11th house. And so that can be something that makes all of this a little easier, maybe even more positive. And your ruler is Mars. The traditional ruler is what I work with. And in this case, Mars is in your 8th house until March. So from August of 2022 till March of 2023. And because of the energy between Mars and then you've got Saturn in your 5th house of children or creativity or so on, there can be this feeling of just feeling a bit antagonized by a situation that might be with regards to your children, or might have something to do with money that is owed to you, or money that you have to negotiate with another person, something that is coming to a head, for example. So again, at this particular time, don't push too hard. Try to find a compromise and try to understand the other person's point of view. Take things slowly, in the sense that it's not about not acting, it's just about seeing that you just don't have all the information. Mars in the 8th house is also, because it represents fears in the 8th house, it's everything that we are frightened of. It's all kinds of transformation. You're well placed to handle it, because Scorpio is all about overcoming fear and transforming, moving on. And yet, nonetheless, it's not easy when Mars is going through the 8th house. And so cut yourself some slack. You might feel extremely tired, particularly because this new moon is in the 12th house. Tends to be where we see this is the house of sleeping and dreaming. As I mentioned, it's confinement. And so maybe you just need a good rest. And so building that into your schedule, building that in somehow into your day or the week, so that you, again, don't push yourself so hard and burn yourself out, Scorpio. I'll see you again in 2 weeks at the full moon. Have a good lunar cycle. Sagittarius, this is happening in your 11th house. So this is a lovely place to have a new moon. It's your hopes and dreams. It's everything that you find inspiring. The 11th house is also your friends. So perhaps there's something new coming through friends, new opportunities, or it could be that you meet new people in this particular period. If you're feeling that you're a bit stagnating in that sense, maybe not finding friends or not connecting with people so easily, try and put yourself out in new and interesting circumstances. I realize I'm saying this to a Sagittarius, so it's probably completely unnecessary, but nonetheless, it's really helpful to do that, because you do have this really supercharged, lovely social energy right now. You also have Venus and Mercury going through your 10th house of career and social standing. That's something that also brings a lot of attention to you. So a really great time to get out there, to circulate, still with the caveat that, if you do meet somebody new, or if you're entertaining a new business idea or business partnership or business offering a new job, for example, just remember, you may not have all the details. They may not be so clear right now. It doesn't mean don't do something. It just means go really slowly. So you, again, might bite off more than you can chew, or it might be that you're not really seeing super clearly what it is that somebody is offering, and it may turn out to be not as great as you think. So this is, again, that sort of sense of too good to be true kind of energy between Neptune and Venus opposing each other, and then Jupiter opposing the new moon. It's a little bit of everything all the time. It's a bit big energy. So I know that you like that, Sagittarius, but this is one that I would like to caution you on. Your ruler, so Jupiter, is retrograde. Whenever the ruler is retrograde, it's also a very good time to just double check things before leaping forward. It doesn't mean that there's any kind of problem that you shouldn't, have to sort of hide at home. Not that you would anyway, but it really just means that you should really be extra thoughtful about what it is that you want to do. Your ruler is in Aries right now, so there's a lot of dynamism. There's an enormous amount of enthusiasm, and so that's something that you really want to kind of keep in check. You don't want to you don't want to exaggerate that, so that you have this, I don't want to, again, I don't want to sort of rain on your parade. It's more that you're not, let's say, functioning at full force when Jupiter is retrograde, or you may not be functioning in your own personal best interest, and especially because Aries is pushing Jupiter to jump into things, which is your tendency as well. Just take care. And there's lots and lots of time here. Try not to rush into things and then discover later that you need to clean up a big mess. So if you've got plans now, keep them developing and put them out into the world after about the 20th of December. And from, let's say, Christmas time, the end of 2022, you're going to have that full steam ahead movement of your ruler moving back into Aries in a trine that's going to give you a lot of energy in the first few months of 2023. So enjoy this fun lunar cycle, with the caveat that you may not be seeing things exactly as they are. So checking your hopes and dreams against reality every now and then. Bye, Sagittarius. Have a great lunar cycle. Capricorn, this is in your 10th house. It's always lovely for you in the 10th house, Venus ruling your house of career and social status. It's one of the significators that helps us to see why Capricorn is the way that they are in the world. Capricorn always presenting themselves with a sense of decorum and pride and so on, as that Venus in the 10th, or at least Venus ruling the 10th. So nonetheless, we see that there's definitely something here about your job and potentially your status as well. So that may be, and especially because it's a new moon, definitely something new in terms of how you're stepping out into the world. A new possibility perhaps within the job itself, or that you're actually contemplating something new, that maybe this is the emphasis that you needed. This may be the kind of momentum that you needed to get yourself moving in a new direction. So you may not necessarily see the results here, but you'll definitely feel this impulse for something new in that 10th house. You've got Venus and Mercury in the 9th house, really supportive. That brings a lot of positive energy. Again, it's a very lucky house in the 9th house. It's the house of dharma, so you have maybe a sense of what it is that you want to do and how you want to do it. But with Mercury retrograde, it may require some revision. You may have had a sense of purpose or a sense of drive that now seems to have, the brakes have been slammed on in the last couple of weeks. And only at the beginning of October are you going to feel this momentum building again. But use October really well. Use it to your advantage, because you're going to have Venus and Mercury and the Sun all in your 10th house of career. And Capricorn, you're super ambitious. So this means a lot to you. So definitely take advantage of that. And this is also something that might touch on home and family. So you've had Jupiter going through this. So there's been a lot preoccupying you around, where do I live? What house do I live in? What's going on with the family? Changes in the family for sure. And so this is something that you might be reconsidering, or that things are shifting in such a way that you have to review. As Jupiter is crossing roughly in opposition, within 1 degree in opposition of this new moon, there's maybe something coming from work that is causing you to have to review what's going on at home. Maybe something new that you desire, or something new that you want to establish in your social life or in your working life, in your public life, that will somehow require some change at home. I think November and December, you're going to have a chance to reconfigure that, re-explore things in that sense of, choice, what it is that I want. And then you'll find the answer coming towards the end of December. And so this particular point will be reactivated again when Jupiter crosses this point in January. So you'll have your answers there if you're looking to move home. So your ruler, Saturn, is in your 2nd house. And with the ruler in the 2nd house, there can be some restriction on money, or a sense of having to restrict your spending in order to invest, for example, or maybe some new structuring around money. That's quite significant at this particular time. And it looks like it's connected with your everyday work because that's trining with Mars in your house of work. So again, just taking things slowly, as I mentioned for the other signs, this is a good time to slow down the desire for change. There's a lot of retrograde planets, including Saturn, and the information is unclear. And so we'll have much more clarity moving into the end of 2022. But basically, we're in a phase right now where you may not have all of the answers that you want, and then things are going to become quite changeable in October and November anyways. So all of that to say, strap in Capricorn, because there may be some really interesting developments for you. And this is just a time to prepare rather than to jump ahead, unless you are already quite familiar with what you're doing, in which case you might have a better instinct around that. Capricorn is not much of a risk taker anyway, but nonetheless worth reminding. Aquarius, this is happening in your 9th house. The 9th house is very much to do with everything philosophical. It's about our goals and plans. So what the Indians call dharma, this idea of what my purpose is, what is it that I'm here to do, and that sense of dharma is also with reference to what is correct, what is right, not just what I want to do, but really what is the right thing for me to do. This is something extremely important to Aquarius, because with Libra there, again, it's the message is reinforced that this is about fairness. So this is trining you. It's trining your particular sign, and that's very harmonious. And so there might be something very new coming into you in the area of higher learning, or potentially international commitments or international work and associations. Maybe a new sense of philosophy of life that you want to kind of expand, a new way of seeing yourself in life. You do also have Mercury and Venus in your house of money, shared resources. This could be something that had to be renegotiated or something that you need to deal with, but it seems to be quite positive here, because there's something that is coming to you through others. So it's usually very benefic when Venus is in the 8th house. It's not necessarily an easy place for her, partly because it's also in her detriment in Virgo, but nonetheless it's Venus, and so there can be some real gains from other people at this time for you, Aquarius. It's just that maybe there's something that needs to be fiddled around that. Maybe something needs to be reviewed or re-examined contractually. Keep in mind that this may not be super clear as well. Again, for Aquarians, money issues have been pretty unclear for a long time already. For about 10, 11 years, you've had Neptune in your 2nd house of money and self-worth, for that matter. So you may not be super clear about things from that point of view. Maybe, what it is that you are entering into financially, or what you enter into in terms of some kind of thing that puts you, your self-worth forward, may not be super clear. And particularly right now, doesn't look like you'll have absolute clarity here. Be careful around money issues, so take your time. I've said that to most of the other signs. And then you've got a really wonderful energy of Jupiter in your house of communications. Jupiter is retrograde at the moment. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be rushing out and communicating with people, but rather that you should reflect when you do communicate. You also have Mars in the 5th house, so that can be also very inspiring creatively. So maybe there's something here that's having you see things in a new and creative way. Since Saturn has been going through your 1st house since December 2020, this new moon, by the way, is trining that entry point where Saturn and Jupiter came together in December 2020 and January 2021. So go back into those times where you were somehow planning something new, where you were feeling something new coming up, and see what's being triggered right now, because this is the new moon that's actually triggering that point in a very harmonious way by trine. So yeah, I think that's it for Aquarius. It's all good, except I'd just be a little cautious around the money stuff. But otherwise, just keep reaching out, because this is definitely an interesting time, an interesting month ahead for Aquarius. So see you at the full moon in a couple of weeks. Pisces, this is your 8th house of shared resources. It's money that you have with other people. It's also, very importantly, everything to do with what terrifies you, what makes you afraid in the most visceral way. So Pisces often can manage these kinds of fears because of that sort of metaphysical way of relating to life. So there's less, perhaps, drama around change. Again, that depends on other aspects of your chart. Nonetheless, it's not an easy house. The 8th house is transformation. Few people really enjoy transformation. We like to control things as they go. And so, yeah, this is definitely something that that might have you thinking or having you fearing things. It looks like you've got some great support, though, from friends and from other people or even clients, because you've got Venus and Mercury in your 7th house. So kind of taking care of you in that regard. Even if Venus is not in great dignity, it's still really helpful. It's still Venus. And so when you have Venus in the 7th, it can bring a lot of harmony in relationships. It can also be that Venus in the 7th, especially because it's Virgo energy there, has you a little over concerned with other people's needs at your own expense. And so beware of that. We also have that even more strongly because Neptune is opposing Venus. And so you may not be seeing clearly how you're coming across or how other people are coming across, or there may be a sense of being betrayed, or maybe you're the one doing that. It's can work both ways, but things are not somehow clear. And so it's worth taking some time to slow down in terms of relationships or even client commitments, money issues. This is a month to sort all of that out in a big way. You have Saturn in the 12th house as well, which is also kind of confronting you in a very deep way, confronting you in a psychological way. There's very big change coming. And then when Saturn enters your 1st house as of March 2023, you're going to kind of restructure yourself in a particularly powerful way. Your ruler is in your 2nd house. So Jupiter is expanding areas around money. So that's good and bad. When Jupiter's in the 2nd house, it can have you spending a lot of money, not necessarily only money coming in, but it also expands the potential to earn. So that's really good for Pisces. Jupiter is opposing this moon, so it can also be a bit of that biting off more than you can chew. So be careful of expenses, especially because Jupiter is retrograde. And when your ruler is retrograde, things don't tend to pan out in the same way as we hope or in the way that they could normally. So take things slowly, and also remember that when Jupiter moves back into the 1st house as of the 28th of October, it's moving back into your sign for a little bit. You'll get a little boost. You'll get a certain lift from that. And then when Jupiter moves at the sort of Christmas period around 20th of December, when Jupiter moves into your 2nd house of money again, this time going direct, you're then going to have many more opportunities, and things should work more along the lines of what you were hoping for. So just don't worry if things are feeling like they're stuck or kind of being held back, kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or even 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Don't worry about it. Just know that this is a period of intense transformation. So go through all of these fears, go through all of this sense of what it is that I'm here for, what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. Can I handle this? Sometimes Pisceans have this sense that life is just too hard. Don't subject yourself to that really self-defeating kind of talk, and allow yourself instead to go through all these fears and recognize that at the root, all fear is the fear of death. And when you understand that, then you feel like, yeah, go ahead, I can take it, because short of death, I can really experience, I can go through anything. So Pisces, have a lovely month ahead, very exciting developments in store for you in the next few months, and make the most of them, especially in this lunar cycle where you can really turn in and examine a bunch of aspects that might have you seeing things in a very, very new way in the following lunar cycle. See you at the full moon in 2 weeks.